number one, I want to tell you how this all happened. I was having dinner with Vestuigi, the gentleman who had already made one pro-life film, the gentleman from Mexico, and his director. And they were talking about what film they wanted to make next. And I said, why don't you do something about the Cristero's movement? And they said, what are you talking about? It was strange. Here's somebody from Mexico who didn't even know about the Cristero's movement. But I did, because I lived through the aftermath of it. We went down on Easter Day in 1937 to visit my grandparents in McAllen, Texas. And we went to Mass early in the morning. We came home and hunted for our Easter eggs, and we had Easter lunch with relatives. And then my brother was supposed to take a nap. My dad said, I'm taking you on a ride. We're going down to Mexico. We're going to Reynosa, Mexico, on the other side of the Rio Grande, 10 miles away, just 10 miles away from his house in McAllen, Texas. We drove down there, crossed on the little old bridge, and climbed up to the top where the city was at the top of a hill. And there was a park there in the center with the city hall and the police station. And then a half a block down the street was a Catholic church. As we got up the hill, there was not one human being on Easter Day out celebrating in the park. There was nobody near the church. There was nothing going on. And you know how Hispanics love to celebrate feast days. They party and sing lovely songs, but they were not there. So my dad said, let's stop in and visit with the Lord. So we parked in front of the church, and there the doors were hanging off on their hinges. And then, as we walked in, we saw the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. The walls of the church were pit-marked with machine gun bullets. They had shot to death everybody at church there 3 weeks before. They had shot to death every single person that was at the Mass, and the priest, and the altar service. And the altar service, little boys, just killed them all, or tried to. We don't know whether they all died immediately or not. But first of all, they broke all the statues, so you had blocks of stone kind of on the centers. But then they lighted all the pews so that the smoke would kill the people that didn't die from the bullet wounds, I guess. I don't know. It was the saddest thing I've ever seen, and it was just 3 weeks before. My dad took my hand, and Mother and I walked out, and he explained to me, these people died for their faith. And they wanted to go to church, and the government didn't want them to because the government soldiers marched in and killed them. I started to cry. It made me so sad. And then he said, you're going to be confirmed in 4 more weeks. And when you're confirmed, you receive the Holy Spirit, like the apostles did on Pentecost. And the Holy Spirit will give you the strength to die for your faith if you ever have an evil government like this. Then we got quietly in the car, and this is so sad because a little tiny boy popped up and said, chicles for sale, chicles for sale, except he said se vende. And my dad bought some, and we drove away. As we were waving, trying to wave goodbye to him, we looked and he was gone. How many of you realize, if you've seen the movie, that Caius, do you know who Caius was? Because he's not even mentioned in the history books in Mexico, and the people there do not know it. And because they don't know it, they're not prepared for that kind of takeover again. Although the PRI was started by Caius and that is a communist-leaning organization in Mexico. And Calles reenacted horrible laws that had been passed some ages before by Benito Juarez. But the people had ignored those for years. And then he changed the bill. What happened, and I have it here, this started a religious persecution when he became president of Mexico in 1924. And he outlawed religious orders, if you can believe this, from Mexico, sent the priest out. Then he said, well, he would make an exception, that he would make a list of ones that could come back. A handful, of course. The new laws were overbearing. He took away all the property rights of the churches. They could not, the government owned the churches. He took away the property rights from the Catholic schools. He said they can have no Catholic schools. And then he said the priest would have no right to trial by jury and no right to vote. Then he even strengthened the law a little later, and he said, this is interesting, he was going to charge them 50 pesos for wearing clerical garb and 5 years imprisonment if he heard that they had criticized his laws. That's terrible. And if you encourage a young man to join a priesthood, that was a criminal offense. Well, after 2 years of this, there was no Mass all this time. There was nothing for the Catholics. And the Catholics were the predominant group in Mexico. Finally, the Catholics rose up and they said, Viva Christ the King. Amen. Yes. The Cristeros were the Christ the King shouters. And after that, there was open war against the Cristeros, the Mexican army, until 1929 when they came to an agreement. The government, Calles was out of office, but he still controlled the presidency. But the Catholic Church agreed on they hoped that the war wouldn't continue, because in those 2 years, 90,000 people died. We had 90,000 martyrs for the faith, or you might even say saints, I don't know. Anybody who dies for the faith, I think, is that. And it's very interesting because the persecution that was supposed to end in 29 did not end until 1945, when Calles, and this may make you happy when you hear this after you've seen the movie, he was sent out of Mexico and exiled to the United States, but he didn't ever get any control of anything in the United States. But when they caught him to take him away, they found him lying on his bed reading Mein Kampf, which would tell you exactly what he felt like. I appreciate your being here, and I want you to know that the story is absolutely true.